The story begins in the bustling heart of New York City, where the skyline is a jagged silhouette against the evening sky. The city is alive with the hum of activity, a microcosm of the nation's pulse. It's an election year, and the air is thick with political tension. The race for the presidency is heating up, and every move, every word, is scrutinized under the unforgiving lens of the media. At the center of this political maelstrom is Karoline Leavit, a young, dynamic conservative candidate who has taken the political world by storm. At just 32 years old, Leavit has become a symbol of a new generation of leadership. Her charisma, sharp intellect, and unyielding stance on key issues have garnered her a massive following. She's a frequent guest on talk shows, her face plastered across news outlets, and her speeches shared virally across social media platforms. To her supporters, she's a breath of fresh air in a stale political landscape. To her detractors, she's a polarizing figure, a lightning rod for controversy. Enter John Carter, a seasoned television host with a reputation for his liberal views and no-holds-barred commentary. John's show, The Carter Hour, is one of the most watched political talk shows in the country. Known for his sharp wit and fearless approach, John has built a career on holding politicians accountable, often crossing the line into provocative and controversial territory. His audience loves him for his honesty, but his critics accuse him of being a provocateur, more interested in ratings than in truth. The stage is set for a collision of ideologies, personalities, and ambitions. John and Karoline represent two opposing ends of the political spectrum, and their paths are about to intersect in a way that will send shockwaves through the nation. It's a typical Tuesday evening at the studio where The Carter Hour is filmed. The set is sleek and modern, with a large desk, a backdrop of the New York skyline, and bright lights that give everything a polished, almost surreal glow. The crew is busy preparing for the live broadcast, adjusting cameras, testing microphones, and running through last-minute checks. John Carter sits in his dressing room, going over his notes for the show. At 45, he's at the top of his game, but the years of late nights and high-pressure deadlines are starting to show. His dark hair is streaked with gray, and there are faint lines around his eyes. But when the cameras roll, he transforms, his energy and charisma lighting up the screen. Tonight's episode is special. Karoline Leavit is the guest, and John knows this is a golden opportunity. Her rising star power and controversial policies make her a perfect target for his brand of journalism. He's prepared a series of tough questions, designed to challenge her and expose what he sees as the flaws in her platform. As the countdown to the live broadcast begins, John feels a familiar rush of adrenaline. This is what he lives for, the thrill of the debate, the clash of ideas, the chance to hold power to account. The show opens with John's usual monologue, a mix of humor and biting commentary on the latest political developments. He sets the stage for the interview, introducing Karoline Leavit as one of the most talked-about figures in politics today. Karoline walks onto the set, her presence commanding attention. She's dressed in a tailored suit, her blonde hair perfectly styled, and her smile confident but measured. She shakes John's hand and takes her seat, her poise unshakable. The interview starts off cordially, with John asking about her background and her vision for the country. Karoline responds with practiced ease, her answers polished and articulate. She talks about her commitment to conservative values, her plans for economic reform, and her belief in limited government. But as the interview progresses, the tone begins to shift. John's questions become more pointed, his demeanor more confrontational. He challenges her on her stance on healthcare, accusing her of wanting to strip away protections for the most vulnerable. He brings up her opposition to climate change policies, suggesting that she's in the pocket of big oil. Karoline holds her ground, her response is calm but firm. She defends her positions, arguing that her policies are about empowering individuals and reducing government overreach. But John isn't satisfied. He pushes harder, his questions becoming more personal. Then it happens. John drops the bombshell. "Ms. Leavit," he says, leaning forward, his eyes locked on hers. "There have been rumors, serious rumors about your past, allegations of financial misconduct, even ties to a major scandal. How do you respond to these claims? The studio falls silent. Karoline's smile falters for just a moment, but she quickly recovers. "Those are baseless accusations," she says, her voice steady. "I have always conducted myself with integrity, and I will not dignify such lies with a response." But John isn't done. He presses further, bringing up a supposed relationship between Karoline and a powerful political figure, suggesting that her rise to prominence might not be entirely her own doing. The audience gasps, the tension in the room palpable. Karoline's composure wavers. "This is outrageous," she says, her voice rising. "You're crossing a line, Mr. Carter." John leans back, a smug smile on his face. "I'm just asking the questions that need to be asked," he says. "The public has a right to know." The interview ends abruptly, with Karoline storming off the set. The live audience is left in stunned silence, and the crew scrambles to cut to a commercial break. Social media explodes with reactions, the clip of the confrontation going viral within minutes. Backstage, John is met with a mix of admiration and concern from his team. They know this is going to be bigger than anything they've done before, but they also know that there will be consequences. As the episode airs, the fallout begins. Karoline's camp releases a statement condemning John's unprofessional and defamatory behavior, threatening legal action. Supporters of both sides take to social media, the debate quickly devolving into a heated, polarized battle. John watches the chaos unfold from his office, a satisfied smile on his face. He knows he's crossed a line, but he also knows that this is what it takes to make a difference. In his mind, he's done his job, he's exposed the truth, no matter the cost. But as the night wears on, a sense of unease begins to creep in. The allegations he made were based on whispers, on anonymous tips. What if he's wrong? What if he's just destroyed a young woman's career based on nothing more than speculation? The weight of his actions begins to settle on his shoulders, but it's too late to turn back. The wheels are in motion, and the story is only just beginning. The morning after the explosive interview, the media landscape is in chaos. Headlines scream from every major news outlet, and social media is ablaze with hashtags like #CarterVS.Leavit and #TruthOrLies. The clip of John Carter's confrontation with Karoline Leavit has been viewed millions of times, and the public is divided. Some hail John as a hero, a fearless journalist willing to ask the hard questions. Others condemn him as a reckless provocateur who crossed the line into character assassination. Karoline Leavit's team wastes no time in damage control. By 8 a.m., she holds a press conference outside her campaign headquarters in Washington, D.C., flanked by her advisors and a handful of high-profile supporters. Karoline addresses the allegations head-on. Her tone is calm but firm, her words measured. "Last night, I was subjected to a baseless and malicious attack on my character," she begins, her voice steady. "The accusations made against me are not only false but deeply irresponsible. They are an attempt to distract from the real issues facing this country and to undermine the trust that the American people have placed in me." She pauses, allowing her words to sink in. The cameras flash, capturing every nuance of her expression. "I have always conducted myself with integrity, both in my personal and professional life. I will not be deterred by these unfounded attacks. My focus remains on serving the American people and fighting for the values that make this country great." The press conference ends with Karoline taking a handful of questions, but she refuses to engage with the specifics of John's allegations. Instead, she reiterates her commitment to transparency and her determination to stay the course. Her performance is flawless, and her supporters rally behind her, flooding social media with messages of solidarity. Meanwhile, John Carter is riding high on the wave of attention. His phone hasn't stopped buzzing since the interview aired, with messages pouring in from colleagues, fans, and critics alike. He's scheduled to appear on several morning shows to discuss the fallout, and he's determined to double down on his claims. On Good Morning America, John sits across from the host, his demeanor confident and unapologetic. "Look, I understand that some people are uncomfortable with the questions I asked," he says, leaning forward. "But as journalists, it's our job to hold those in power accountable. If Karoline Leavit wants to be a leader in this country, She needs to be prepared to answer tough questions. The host presses him on the lack of concrete evidence to support his allegations. John brushes it off. These are serious allegations, and they deserve to be investigated. I stand by what I said, and I believe the truth will come out. Back at the studio, John's team is divided. Some admire his boldness, while others worry about the potential legal and professional repercussions. You know they're going to come after you, right? His producer, Sarah, says during a tense meeting. Leavit's team is already threatening to sue. John shrugs. Let them. I'm not afraid of a fight. The public reaction is swift and polarized. On one side, John's supporters applaud him for his courage, flooding his social media with messages of support. Thank you for speaking truth to power. One tweet reads, "We need more journalists like you." Another user writes, "Karoline Leavit is hiding something, and John Carter is the only one brave enough to call her out." On the other side, Karoline's supporters are outraged. They accuse John of spreading lies and engaging in a smear campaign. This is why people don't trust the media. One commenter writes, "John Carter is a disgrace to journalism." Hashtags like #IStandWithCaroline and #FireJohnCarter trend on Twitter, with thousands of users calling for his resignation. The controversy spills over into mainstream discourse, with politicians, pundits, and celebrities weighing in. Some defend John's right to ask tough questions, while others condemn his tactics as unethical and damaging. The debate becomes a microcosm of the broader cultural and political divide in the country. Behind the scenes, the executives at John's network are in crisis mode. The interview has generated unprecedented ratings, but it's also sparked a firestorm of controversy. Advertisers are threatening to pull their sponsorships, and the network's legal team is bracing for a potential lawsuit. In a closed-door meeting, the network's CEO, Michael Thompson, addresses the situation. "We need to decide how we're going to handle this," he says, his tone grave. John's interview has put us in a difficult position. On one hand, it's great for ratings. On the other hand, we're facing serious backlash. Some executives argue that John should be reprimanded or even fired. "He crossed a line," one says. "We can't afford to be associated with this kind of journalism." Others defend him, pointing to the spike in viewership. "This is what people want," another executive argues. "We can't punish John for doing his job." The debate rages on, but no clear decision is reached. For now, the network decides to stay the course, releasing a carefully worded statement that neither condemns nor condones John's actions. Karoline Leavit isn't content to let the controversy die down. She knows that, in the court of public opinion, perception is everything. Her team launches a coordinated counteroffensive, releasing a series of videos and statements that highlight her accomplishments and character. They also begin digging into John Carter's past, looking for anything they can use to discredit him. Meanwhile, Karoline's legal team prepares to file a defamation lawsuit against John and the network. "We're not going to let them get away with this," her lead attorney says during a strategy meeting. "We're going to hit them hard." As the days pass, John begins to feel the weight of his actions. The initial rush of adrenaline has worn off, replaced by a gnawing sense of unease. He replays the interview in his mind, questioning whether he went too far. The lack of concrete evidence to support his allegations looms large in his thoughts. One night, he sits alone in his apartment, scrolling through the endless stream of comments and articles about the controversy. The vitriol directed at him is overwhelming, and for the first time in his career, he feels a flicker of doubt. "What if I'm wrong?" he whispers to himself, but it's too late to turn back. The story has taken on a life of its own, and John is caught in the middle of a storm of his own making. Just as the controversy seems to be reaching a fever pitch, a bombshell drops. An anonymous source leaks a series of documents to a rival news outlet, claiming to provide evidence of Karoline Leavit's alleged financial misconduct. The documents appear to show transactions linking Karoline to a shell company involved in a major corruption scandal. The leak sends shockwaves through the political world. Karoline's team immediately denounces the documents as fake, but the damage is done. The narrative shifts, and suddenly, John's allegations don't seem so far-fetched. John watches the news unfold with a mix of relief and dread. He knows this changes everything, but he also knows that the fight is far from over. The leaked documents dominate the news cycle, sparking a frenzy of speculation and analysis. Karoline Leavit's campaign, once riding high on momentum, is now in full damage control mode. Her team scrambles to discredit the documents, calling them a desperate attempt to smear a rising political star. But the damage is done. The public's trust in Karoline begins to erode, and her opponents seize the opportunity to attack her credibility. Karoline holds an emergency meeting with her closest advisors in a dimly lit conference room at her campaign headquarters. The atmosphere is tense, the weight of the scandal pressing down on everyone in the room. "We need to get ahead of this," Karoline says, her voice sharp with frustration. "If we don't, this could end my campaign and my career." Her legal team advises caution. "We can't confirm or deny anything until we've verified the authenticity of these documents," her lead attorney says. "But we need to prepare for the worst." Karoline's campaign manager, Mark, suggests a bold move. "We need to go on the offensive. Let's hold a town hall, address the allegations head-on, and show the American people that you have nothing to hide." Karoline hesitates. The idea of facing the public in such a vulnerable state terrifies her, but she knows she has no choice. "Fine," she says finally. "Set it up. But we need to control the narrative. No surprises." 2 days later, Karoline stands on a stage in a packed auditorium in Ohio, one of the key battleground states in the upcoming election. The room is buzzing with anticipation, the air thick with tension. Cameras from every major network are trained on her, ready to broadcast her every word to the nation. Karoline begins with a heartfelt apology. "I want to start by saying how deeply sorry I am for the distraction this has caused," she says, her voice trembling slightly. "My focus has always been on serving the American people, and I regret that this controversy has taken the spotlight away from the issues that matter most." She then addresses the allegations directly. "The documents that have been leaked are false. They are part of a coordinated effort to undermine my campaign and silence my voice. I have nothing to hide, and I welcome a full investigation to clear my name." The audience is divided. Some applaud her courage, while others shout accusations and demands for answers. Karoline fields questions from the crowd, her responses measured but emotional. She talks about her upbringing, her values, and her commitment to public service. By the end of the event, she has won over some skeptics, but the shadow of doubt still lingers. Meanwhile, John Carter watches the town hall from his apartment, a mix of emotions swirling inside him. The leaked documents have vindicated his allegations, but the cost has been higher than he anticipated. His inbox is flooded with messages, some congratulatory, others hateful. The network has reinstated him as a hero, but the weight of his actions still gnaws at him. He decides to address the controversy on his next show. When the cameras roll, John sits at his desk, his usual confidence tempered by a newfound humility. "I want to take a moment to address the events of the past week," he begins. "When I first raised questions about Karoline Leavit, I did so because I believed it was my duty as a journalist to seek the truth. But I also recognized that my approach was aggressive. For that, I take responsibility." He pauses, choosing his words carefully. The leaked documents have brought new information to light, but they have also caused immense pain and division. As journalists, we have a responsibility to pursue the truth, but we must also remember the human cost of our actions. To Karoline Leavit and her supporters, I offer my sincere apologies for any harm I may have caused. The segment ends with John vowing to continue his work with greater sensitivity and integrity. The response is mixed, but many viewers appreciate his willingness to reflect and apologize. As the days pass, the controversy takes on a life of its own. The FBI announces an investigation into the allegations against Karoline, citing the leaked documents as evidence of potential financial misconduct. Karoline's campaign is thrown into chaos, with donors pulling their support and key staff members resigning. Karoline herself is defiant. "I will not be intimidated," she says in a statement. I have done nothing wrong, and I am confident that the truth will prevail. But behind the scenes, the pressure is taking its toll. Karoline begins to withdraw, canceling public appearances and retreating to her home in Virginia. Her once unshakable confidence is replaced by a quiet desperation. Just when it seems the story can't get any more complicated, a new player enters the scene. A whistleblower comes forward, claiming to have insider knowledge of the scandal. The whistleblower, a former employee of the shell company linked to Karoline, provides additional documents and testimony that seem to corroborate the allegations. The media descends on the story, dissecting every detail. Karoline's team denies the whistleblower's claims, calling them baseless and politically motivated. But the damage is irreparable. Karoline's poll numbers plummet, and her chances of winning the election grow slimmer by the day. John Carter finds himself at a crossroads. The whistleblower's revelations have reignited the controversy, and his network is pressuring him to capitalize on the story. But John is haunted by the toll the scandal has taken on Karoline and her family. He meets with Sarah, his producer, to discuss his next steps. "We have to cover this," Sarah says. "It's the biggest story of the year." John hesitates. "I know, but I can't shake the feeling that we're destroying someone's life. What if we're wrong?" Sarah sighs. "We're journalists, John. Our job is to report the facts, not to worry about the consequences." John nods, but the doubt lingers. He knows the story is far from over, and the choices he makes next will define his career and his conscience. In the quiet of her home, Karoline sits alone, staring at the television as the news cycles endlessly replay the scandal. The weight of the accusations, the betrayal of those she trusted, and the relentless media scrutiny have pushed her to her breaking point. She picks up her phone and dials a number. "It's me," she says quietly. "We need to talk." The person on the other end listens intently as Karoline lays out her plan. "I'm not going down without a fight," she says, her voice firm. "If they want a war, they'll get one." The final chapter of the story begins with a sense of impending resolution, but the path to the truth is anything but straightforward. The scandal has consumed the nation, and the lives of Karoline Leavit and John Carter are irrevocably intertwined in a battle for redemption, justice, and survival. Karoline Leavit, now a shadow of her former self, emerges from her self-imposed isolation with a fire in her eyes. She holds a press conference in front of her home, flanked by her legal team and a handful of loyal supporters. The media descends, eager to hear her response to the whistleblower's allegations. "For weeks, I have been the target of a vicious smear campaign," Karoline begins, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "The allegations against me are not only false but part of a coordinated effort to destroy my career and silence my voice. Today, I am here to set the record straight." She unveils a series of documents and recordings that she claims exonerate her. The evidence includes emails, bank statements, and testimonies from former colleagues that contradict the whistleblower's claims. Karoline also reveals that the shell company at the center of the scandal was set up by a political rival to frame her. "This is not just an attack on me," she says, her voice rising. "This is an attack on the democratic process itself. I will not stand by while my name and my reputation are dragged through the mud. I am filing lawsuits against those responsible for this defamation, and I will not rest until the truth is known." The press conference sends shockwaves through the political world. Karoline's supporters rally behind her, while her critics scramble to reassess their positions. The narrative begins to shift, and for the first time in weeks, Karoline feels a glimmer of hope. John Carter watches Karoline's press conference from his studio, his stomach churning with guilt and uncertainty. The evidence she presents is compelling, and for the first time, he questions the validity of his own reporting. He replays the interview in his mind, wondering if he had been too quick to judge, too eager to believe the worst. He calls Sarah into his office. "We need to dig deeper," he says. "If there's even a chance that Karoline is telling the truth, we owe it to her and to our audience to find out." Sarah hesitates. "John, we've already gone all in on this story. If we backtrack now, it could destroy our credibility. And if we don't, we could destroy an innocent person's life," John counters. I can't live with that. Sarah nods reluctantly, and the two begin to investigate the new evidence. What they uncover shocks them. The whistleblower who came forward has a history of making false claims and was paid by a shadowy political operative with ties to Karoline's rival. The leaked documents, it seems, were part of an elaborate setup. John presents his findings to the network's executives, urging them to issue a retraction and apologize to Karoline. The meeting is tense, with some executives arguing that admitting fault would damage the network's reputation. We can't just sweep this under the rug, John insists. We have a responsibility to correct our mistakes. If we don't, we're no better than the people who set this whole thing up. After hours of debate, the network agrees to air a special segment in which John will address the new findings and issue a public apology to Karoline. The segment airs during prime time, and the nation watches with bated breath. John sits at his desk, his usual confidence replaced by a somber humility. Over the past few weeks, I have been at the center of a story that has shaken our nation, he begins. I raised questions about Karoline Leavit's integrity, and in doing so, I contributed to a narrative that has caused immense harm. Today, I am here to set the record straight. He outlines the new evidence, explaining how the whistleblower's claims were fabricated and how Karoline was the victim of a political conspiracy. I was wrong, he admits, his voice heavy with regret. I allowed my desire for a sensational story to cloud my judgment, and in doing so, I failed as a journalist. To Karoline Leavit, I offer my deepest and most sincere apology. I am truly sorry for the pain I have caused you and your family. The segment ends with John vowing to use this experience as a lesson and to recommit himself to the principles of ethical journalism. The response is mixed, with some praising his honesty and others accusing him of trying to save face. Karoline watches John's apology from her home, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in weeks, she feels a sense of vindication. Her legal team begins preparing lawsuits against the political operative and the media outlets that perpetuated the false narrative. She holds another press conference, this time with a renewed sense of purpose. Today is a victory for truth and justice, she says. But it is also a reminder of how fragile our democracy can be. We must remain vigilant against those who seek to undermine it for their own gain. Her poll numbers begin to climb, and her campaign regains its momentum. The scandal, while devastating, has also humanized her, and many voters admire her resilience and determination. In the aftermath of the scandal, John Carter resigns from his position at the network. He takes a step back from the spotlight, reflecting on his career and the choices he has made. He decides to start a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting ethical journalism and holding the media accountable. In a final interview, John reflects on the lessons he has learned. This experience has humbled me, he says. It has reminded me that the pursuit of truth is not just about exposing wrongdoing, but also about seeking justice and compassion. I hope that my story can serve as a cautionary tale for others in my profession. The scandal leaves a lasting impact on the political and media landscape. Karoline Leavit goes on to win the election, her victory seen as a triumph over adversity. She uses her platform to advocate for campaign finance reform and greater transparency in politics. John Carter's nonprofit gains traction, and he becomes a leading voice in the fight for ethical journalism. While his reputation is forever tarnished, he finds a new sense of purpose in his work. The whistleblower and the political operative behind the scandal are eventually brought to justice, their actions exposed as part of a broader conspiracy to manipulate the election. The story serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of misinformation and the importance of holding those in power accountable.